Hello again, folks. Here with Jamin on the Insecurity project. Today, my guest is the one and only Ronsley Vaz. Super excited to have Ronsley with us today. Ronsley is the founder and chief energy officer of Must Amplify, the founder and chief product officer of We Are Podcast, the founder of Library of Sound, and the executive producer of the Psychology of Entrepreneurship, and a whole kind of other things. He's done a TED Talk, he's written books. He's had a very successful podcast with over 5 million downloads. So there's so much to talk about, Ron. So I'm just so excited to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I love being on other people's shows. I love the whole experience of being interviewed. So this is an absolute treat for me. It's the other way around. I think for me, I'm like, yeah, ask me things that I've not thought of before. So yeah, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Ask you things you haven't thought of before. Great. That's a good challenge. So I'm going to take you back to the beginning, because I find that people's backstory is often the thing in their mind about the reason why they think they can't succeed, or if I'd had an easier life, or more loving parents, or if this had happened, or that had happened, or that hadn't happened, then I'd be fine. But so I love hearing a wide range of backstory to see where you started and what you did with what you were given at the beginning. So tell us about what it was like growing up in your family, the role your parents played in kind of shaping your sense of self, and what you were given at the beginning. Tell us the start.
So I know you told me that this was coming, but I didn't really think of the answer. And it's really fascinating because I love being in the moment and feeling what comes through. And what comes through for me is I was really lucky, really absolutely lucky. I even say that a lot, that there's a parable in the Bible, Jamin, and I'm not I was brought up Catholic, but I'm not religious in any way. But there's a parable in the Bible about these people that were given this 1 coin and 3 coins and 5 coins, and the person that's does this with 5 coins doubles it. Really, that's the moral of the story. I feel like I've been given 50. I feel like I've given way more than I should have been given, in the sense that I was lucky that I had loving parents, have loving parents. They're still around, and it allowed me to just, I suppose, study. That's what they cared about the most, like being literate. And figuring out myself, I suppose, I was allowed to do that, even though I didn't really fit in anything. So I was in all the sports teams, and I was in the debate and elocution and, general knowledge. I was the captain of the elocution team. And so it was just this interesting mix. I didn't fit in the geek section. I didn't fit into the sports people section. This was right from school, right? But it's only like after all this time that I can express that. So I think I had a great life. I think I was lucky. I think I was blessed. I think I really learned to be an entrepreneur after my first business failed. And I think that's probably the time I just got married, I suppose. So there was another element of being, 3 months from being married and having $478,000 of debt. So I think that part was really a new definition for me, because I think that was my first proper adversity, even though I still don't think of it as adversity. But that's the thing that I feel, that was a testing phase, right, in my life. So yeah, pretty lucky. Saying all that, there was a period that I didn't talk to my parents for 3 years. After being married, there was this, it was really fascinating. So I'm just getting to a point where I've had to develop myself to be the healing person that heals my wife's side of the family. And it's this really interesting journey for me now that I'm the person that brings all these 2 families together, like really together, like we see each other every day together, which is weird because they're in a different country. So
Yeah,
Um,
I saw a post that you put about exercising with your in-laws every day on Zoom. So yeah, amazing that you've got that healing role in that family. Um, yeah, family's such an interesting place to explore because they're the people we watch, they're the people we learn from, they're the people who help us form our beliefs about ourselves. So it sounded like the blessing of loving parents who gave you confidence, gave you resources, the ability to go and be the person you wanted to be, and that then led you to take risks early from the sound of things. But then the first adversity, which we don't really call it that, but the business failure. So take us through what it was like to kind of have your first nosebleed or your first kick in the guts, to have started with confidence, to go, oh, okay, there's a few challenges here, and what did you learn about yourself in the process, and how did that shape you for the next venture?
yeah, I mean, again, hindsight is always 2020, and you can kind of look back and create great stories. So I want to put that in perspective, because I don't think that anything that I've done, I've kind of like thought through that far ahead necessarily. I have backup plans in case things don't go the way it should in immediate circumstances, but I'm not the kind of person to kind of go, I have this big project plan, it's going to go exactly that. I'm not that sort of person. So I was pretty lucky and blessed in that way. Um, and uh, I think everyone said to me, monetize my passion. And I've cooked for some of the most famous people on the planet. I'm not even joking. Like famous politicians, actors, entrepreneurs now. Like, so it's been a thing. I've made people cry eating my food. It's weird to say that, but that's the thing. So, um, I always thought of myself as a 9 to 5 person, and I had a job, and when I realized I had to open a business, it was like, okay, monetize your passion, start a business, start a restaurant, right? So that was my first business, was a restaurant. But I was learning to be a business owner on the job. I thought I was learning to be a chef because I
Right.
could all because I could cook, right? So
Yeah.
I got my chef degree. So I paid my a head chef, and part of his role was to like make sure that I was a qualified chef. So I got but what I was really learning was to be a business owner, to be an entrepreneur, like so. Um, Learn things like team, learn things like operations, learn things like culture, learn things like marketing, and even though I had an MBA, and I at the time, it didn't really prepare me for that. So I think that was my 4 years of learning to be a business owner, to be an entrepreneur, to learn all the other elements. And the hardest thing with that was, Jamin, was that I started with negative 200 odd grand because I had to invest all this money to even open my doors, right?
Mm.
So that was the biggest lesson I learned was, first find the market, then make the thing, because in the process of having $478,000 of debt is you get really creative with stuff. So um I'm going to fast forward and say that I had a chefing business where chefs would plug in from one end, they would go to people's homes and cook food for them, and they would put the food in their freezer, in their fridge and freezer, and in the Google Calendar. So they just had all their food sorted. And these chefs would be part-time, didn't have all the hours done. So it worked really well. They would get paid. These guys would want that kind of service. It was called Bon Appetit. And I started a podcast to kind of give people the idea that everyone has a food emotional story. And the famous question I would ask on the show is, what were your earliest and fondest memories around food? And I've heard the works, right? I'm
Mm.
1,400 interviews later today. I've done over 1,400 interviews. So I've heard everything. And I think I hear everything, but every time I do another one, I'm like, oh shit, this is crazy. So I learned um, I learned a lot. I learned how much I needed to be validated by people. But that comes with time. That's not something very simple to expose. That's not something that, so it comes with time, it comes with success, it comes with a relative feeling of confidence to actually even go into that area. And this is something I've never thought of or said before. And that's why I love these things, because I'm literally hearing this for the first time. So I'm going, oh, that's interesting. That's the way I think about it. So my learnings from that point have been amazing, because Rochelle, I learned, my wife taught me how to borrow her confidence, because I did not have that at the time. And I learned how to use that, build from that, to get my own, build from scratch, because I was shattered, right? Everything was put into this. My in-laws were losing their mind, going, what the fuck? Like, 3 months married, what have you got my daughter into, right? And my parents are going, just go get a job, Ronsley. You've got 2 master's degrees. Why aren't you going? Why? And not that I didn't get a job. I got a job just as a chef. They went back to the kitchen. Is really interesting, because I felt like I still needed to learn that. I get money, but still learn that. So, Jamin, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think I've learned so much, and I continue to learn, and every day is a new learning curve for me. So,
Would tell us, let's tap into the learning about yourself. And I'm really fascinated by that line, borrowing your wife's confidence. One of the things that I've thought a lot about in terms of overcoming insecurity is that insecurity at its most precise is an opinion problem. And when you're really clear, it's just your own opinion of yourself. That's the mechanics of what's really broken down. You have a low opinion, you form some opinions based on past failures, mistakes. And so while other people can have opinions that are nice to hear or painful to hear, ultimately at some point you've kind of got to resolve your own opinions of yourself. So I'm fascinated by the process of kind of borrowing your wife's confidence until you found your own. Can you step us through that, how that happened, if you're just reflecting on it now, how her confidence then led to your own?
Yeah, so there were things like, for example, we both did the Key Person of Influence program. So this is a very specific example. Um, so during the time of going through the debt and having the debt, I still had a job at this time, by the way. And a friend of mine needed a website done. And I did her website, and I said, you know what? I did it so quickly because I've got a master's in computer engineering. I can build a website in my sleep, right? So it's anyway. The point is that I did it for Sammy, and I said, nah, you're starting off. I don't need the money. I did it quickly. Anyway, she bought me a ticket to the Brand Accelerator, and she got me the VIP thing, and we both went to the 1-day event that happened in Brisbane. This is 2013.
Yeah.
And I finished the day, and I booked in for the next session, did the 2 hours. And then Rochelle asked me, I think that day after I got back, she's like, how did it go? And I told her, I was excited. I was like, this is all that stuff. And I said, but we can't afford it. Like we didn't have money. We didn't have money. Like, it was negative, right? So yeah. So it was like, and she said, no, you're signing up. We'll find the money. What? How lucky do I got to be to have that happen? Right? It could have gone how many different ways. And I go, wow, that's proper good luck. And then that is a proper sign. And because of her, I signed up to KPI, and now they use me in their slide decks.
They do, of course. Yeah. And that's how I came across you. I'm in KPI a few years later, but one of the key ideas of KPI, one of their philosophies, for those who are not familiar with their process, Glenn Carlson and Daniel Priestley, is that you're sitting on a mountain of value. You really are. You just are speaking the wrong message to the wrong people in the wrong way. You haven't created product around it. You're not partnered with anyone who has your clients. Your pricing's all wrong. There's a bunch of structure we can create and to help you position that. So again, your wife's confidence was not just let's spend some money on some course. So your wife's confidence was, Ronsley, it's true. You are sitting on a mountain of value, and you mightn't be able to see it like I can see it yet, but I believe that this is true. And if you could understand that value and capitalize on that value and harness that value, this investment will change both our lives.
So I got goosebumps listening to that, because I've never heard that version. Yes, that is, yeah. So, her belief in me has been absolutely insane, and it is really emotional to think that someone could, if you had a track record, it's different. If you've done this before, it's different, right? At the time, it was my first business, and I was just learning. I was thinking to myself, fuck, I'm not cut out for this shit. What, I've lost my money, I've lost other people's money. What the fuck am I doing? Why? And when the restaurant shut, I had 12 people that I had to say, hey, from tomorrow, sorry, this is done. So, that's all that has baggage, and a lot of baggage, to the point that when someone knocks, that used to be the case, and that is, it's still, I remember all the debt collectors, because we were 3 days from eviction. We had a 7-day eviction notice. I was like, I don't know how this house is gone right now. We're gonna find a way to, I don't know, rent, or I'm gonna lose everything in this house. And then 3 days before, somehow the universe provided just enough that was needed. Same thing happened with the car. People were outside the door to take the car away, and I was like, oh shit, what do you mean take the car away? So, I don't know, the universe has always provided. I've been extremely lucky, Jamin. I think that has been the best thing for me. But I have to give my mother credit, because anytime anything happened to me when I was in school, didn't matter, I was in a lot of trouble, a lot of trouble. She would first make sure that I took responsibility for being there and being present in that moment, before I blamed anyone for why I did something. And I think that one thing has helped me see everything as, oh, this is my responsibility. Who else can I blame? There's no one else to blame, right? So that has been a huge understanding over 40 years.
Amazing. Now, in this podcast, on my style, I've taken a lead from Tim Ferriss. I love his skill set around deconstructing excellence, and I love the way his interview style and his writing style, because he's kind of got this engineering brain that goes, here's someone who succeeded at a world-class level, and perhaps they haven't fully understood how they got there themselves. It's my job, if I can understand it, so I can model it and deconstruct it and reproduce it. So I've got a few more questions for you, Ronsley, because you have succeeded at a pretty inspirational level in a bunch of areas, and you've talked about your mother's influence and your wife's influence, and the joy of a wife or a partner who believes in you and who sees the best of you and knows the challenges. And thinking about my own wife and what I've put her through, and how she's the one that consistently goes, it's going to be okay. When I lose faith, but at some point you've obviously found faith in yourself. At some point you've obviously found enough grit and determination in your own ability to look yourself in the eyes and to give yourself certainty and confidence. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible to continue to evolve and adapt to create a TED Talk. You don't just get given that opportunity just because you got some value. You've got to have understood your own value and be able to communicate that. You don't have so many people listening to your podcast without you understanding that you're sitting on something very worthwhile that people are finding great benefit in. So I want to understand a bit more about how you did it. How did you internalize confidence so that you were able to continue to evolve as a human being?
Ooh. I think I was always trying to prove something initially, for sure. Like this wasn't like a noble path that I chose to any stretch of the imagination. So um, I think initially it was, look, I'm a success, or like how do I prove that I'm a success? Like, and I'll tell you why, because like in 40 years I have 7 careers, like a software engineer, financial advisor, I've taken 2 companies to ISO 9001 accreditation, restaurateur, chef. Like when I say, I'm talking about proper careers, right? And on that list is, I've been a best man for 7 people. Like this is in 40 years. And I can't, I look at the list and go, how can someone do that? And I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I think that I was just trying to get the next thing, and now I'm appreciating that it's done. So I just feel like I was a constant learner. I loved the idea of like picking up a new skill. I felt like I was a superhero if I learned a new skill, like it was a new talent. So I've I've DJ'd for like thousands and thousands of people. I've played on stage the guitar. I've done all. I've climbed in 4 continents, rock climbed faces that very few people even go on. Like when I think about the shit that I've done, Jamin, I'm like, what? And and I think somehow, I don't know. I don't know. I feel blessed and lucky to be able to have the opportunity to like, I think it's because my parents had that base. Maybe I could go and attempt the jump and feel like I could jump. Because I had my wife, I feel like I could take that jump. And sometimes not sometimes, even though all that has happened, this is, I think, what I feel like I still lack the capabilities in, is asking for help when I need it. And I feel like if we can learn that, or if we can teach that, if we can become a student of that, at least the next generation can ask for help when required, rather than feel like they're alone. Because holy shit, the entrepreneur journey feels like you're alone, but it's happening to every single person. And I've interviewed entrepreneurs on death row. I've interviewed entrepreneurs, 9, 10, 11 figure entrepreneurs. All of us have the same insecurities, same worry, same kind of drive to be better, to take the next step. Oh, I've got this platform. What can I do with it?
Beautiful. I'd love to understand some of the things you've learned from the psychology of entrepreneurship, that podcast you've done. I watched that manic trip around the US, interviewing some incredible characters in a very short space of time, and then seeing you on oxygen in a wheelchair afterwards. Went Ronsley dug deep. He went hard and fast, and now he's going to rest for the next 6 months.
No, dude, I was in a wheelchair off to a speaking gig in Thailand. Lucky I had 3 days to recover, but with fever I had to give that session. But yeah, you're right. Thank you for reminding me of that. It was a fucking epic ride. Yeah.
But before I get you to tell us any of the things you learned about that, I have this idea, and it's definitely not unique. I wonder if you agree or not. Do you think every adult is on a trajectory toward entrepreneurship? Do you think it is the natural path for humans? If every human is uniquely gifted and talented, do you think the natural manifestation of that is in an entrepreneurship way, that ultimately, if you spend your life serving someone else's vision, making someone else rich, doing someone else's thing, that on some level that's a waste? What do you think about that?
Well, on the show, I say this a lot, that I believe mothers are the original entrepreneurs.
Mm.
And I genuinely believe mothers are the original entrepreneurs, because they have to package. If they fail at what they do, someone dies. right? That's, if there's no other way to express that, and they have to become whoever they need to be, the hug giver, the chef, the driver,
Yeah.
whatever
Wow.
the fuck they need to be to make sure that this kid has got value and gives that to the world. There's no other better definition of entrepreneurship.
Mm.
And and if I look at it that way, if I think about the amount of mothers and artists and entrepreneurs that are like are not valuing themselves from a monetary standpoint, because just society has not allowed us to expand that thinking. I believe mothers should get paid for what they do. Like anyway, that's the different story. The point is, it depends on your definition of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Yeah. And sometimes entrepreneurship for people is business, exchange with it is totally is sustainability of your art and craft is part of the whole thing. um but I wish, yeah, I wish more people understood that they were already doing entrepreneurial things in their life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great distinction. Okay, so tell us some of the highlight learnings from that, well, from the podcast and from those interviews about the psychology of entrepreneurship. What's stood out to you so far?
Well, lots of commonalities, right? And I wanted to, this psychology of entrepreneurship was everything that I learned really from doing all the interviews before. And I didn't want to do another just interview type show. I wanted to make it like a catalog that our clients could look at and say, hey, I want something like this. So
Mhm.
I interviewed people in person before COVID, um, and got to spend time with them, which, I believe was my biggest. If some people think, oh, where was the ROI, is like the energy exchange from being in the vicinity of this human for 90 minutes used to be the minimum time. But a lot of the time it used to be 4 hours, because we used to have lunch, and then because they would feel like, oh, you come from Australia to interview me, right? So, and then I would approach these people who probably might have said no. Maybe they would have said no, I think. But because it was psychology of entrepreneurship, they were entrepreneurs. I saw some crazy stuff, like going to Tucker Max's house in Austin. For example, my wife Rachel and I went there, and we were knocking on the door, and then someone opens another door from that side, and it was a gigantic, massive house. And Tucker opens the door and he goes, "Dude, that's just a guest house." And I'm like, "What?" So, um, what I learned is that we're all so same. Bias is probably the first thing we need to worry about or care about, or look at, because I think you mentioned this briefly before, but the thing that can literally make the biggest difference to anyone in any situation of downtime is perspective shift. Anytime you're down and you feel low and you feel like, oh, one small perspective shift will be, time is irrelevant in that scenario, right? So allowing perspective and seeing where your biases are, what you defend, why do you defend those things, why do you feel so strongly that you would not see another side of the story. I think that bias is the first thing entrepreneurs need to worry about. And the other thing is, it doesn't matter how successful you are, like we've not we I mean the agency, it's not me anymore, the agency has done this stuff for like really some of the most, I don't know, people that have been everywhere, right? Like actors that have got Academy Awards, Emmy Awards. Even these people think, oh, what should I say, and will that be a good thing to say out loud? So my point is, we are all the same, and it's ridiculous that we think that we are alone on this journey, and we're not. Everyone's kind of going through their own personal development in their own way.
Mm. You did a TEDx talk, which is now a TED talk, about the recipe for deep conversations. So I imagine some of the beauty of your learnings with these entrepreneurs came out of the overflow of your skill set around deep conversations. Can you give us a snapshot about what that recipe for deep conversations is, and how you came to learn that?
So I think sometimes being grateful for how the pieces came together just blows my mind. Like literally, I having a TEDx talk was not my dream. It was a friend's dream, and we were writing goals together. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll do a TEDx talk. And so this is a practice that I do every year. The end December end week, usually the 31st of December, I write a letter to myself in the future. So a year from now, I'm Ronsley a year from now, and I'm grateful for the last year, and I write a whole bunch of shit. So in that letter, I wrote in July, I'm going to do it, my TEDx talk. It was amazing. It was great. Like I was so lucky. And I did it locally because that was something I wanted to do. I didn't want to like, go to some random place and do a TEDx talk. So, dude, August, I can't even imagine. Like it was, I'm one of the few people, and I thought they would give it to anyone. And after me, obviously, a lot of people in the KPI world, in other places, applied to go, oh, yeah, it must be simple. And they rejected them all. So I was like, what? Maybe I'm special. And I'm still learning that. And I'm still appreciating that. And I can't believe that they gave me that opportunity. So I spoke about having deep conversations because what I learned the most about podcasting is that I was a shitty listener.
Hmm.
And I think I learned to listen better, and I'm still learning to listen better. And the thesis of my TEDx talk um, is just that. If you ever want to have a deep conversation, it's not about getting your point across, which everyone thought for the first 11 minutes. And in the last 30 seconds, I'm like, it's really about you listening. If you really want to have a deep conversation, that's how you do it. So I'm just blown away because in 2020, so I'm from Goa in India. The TEDx Goa sent me an email or a message on Facebook actually, and said we'd love for you to speak at TEDx Panaji in Goa. And we've never had a TED speaker before. And I'm like, no, I'm just a TEDx speaker. And they're like, no, you're a TED speaker. I'm like, no, dude, like just look at the thing behind is an X. And they send me the link. And I got goosebumps right now because I was like, how did this happen? So I don't know. I just feel I scratch my head too. Like, I mean, like, that's the way I feel genuinely. I'm like, I'm just so lucky to be on this goddamn trip. Thank you for letting me do these things because, I've experienced a lot.
Just the joy and wonder and lightness with which you refer to yourself and your journey. It's so refreshing. People take themselves very seriously, and I even think about my own journey. My desire for success sometimes manifests as real striving, and it has a harshness to it. Sometimes has a desperation. It's like, I'm just so trying to achieve, and every time I rest and find joy and play and gratitude, it's a very, very different experience of life, and it's a much more open place to live from. So, how important has intentional personal development been for you along the way? Is it something that you do kind of just as it happens, or are you structured around how you grow as a human being?
Oh, well, I think this is really important, probably for the story and the context of the story, because one of the things I did to get myself out of the rut of the debt was I started to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. So 4:29 was my thing. And as a result, I interviewed Hal Elrod because his book, I kind of like really started to do some of the practices in his book,
Yeah.
like silence, exercise, you know,
Yeah.
that morning,
The
and
morning
then
miracle.
the morning miracle.
Mm.
And it's crazy because now Hal Elrod is a friend. He's just contacted my phone. He spoke at via podcast. That is just what? Um, but the point I'm making is I think that that is probably the thing that changed. The reps that I got by doing that has changed. So like, yeah, I mean, there are times that I don't meditate for a while, but I can sit in silence in a room for an hour, and I've gotten myself to a point to be in silence and sit in meditation for an hour. And when I first started, I couldn't even do it for 2 minutes.
Mm.
So I feel like that has helped, like in leaps and bounds. Um, my mother was telling my wife the other day that she's thinks that I'm extremely patient that she's ever seen me, and my wife goes, so do you want to thank me for that? And I'm like, every opportunity for you to take the limelight. But you know, I think that for me that was such a cool moment to like, huh, that's it's interesting for people to say that because um, that means that in a crisis situation, my family can now trust me to be calm.
Mm.
So um, yeah, I'm you know, I don't know where I'm going with that, Jamin. Sorry.
Well, the Morning Miracle is an extraordinary book, and what I love about frameworks is I think the best ones are elegantly simple. I think that you don't even have to be perfect at practicing. If you just find some stuff that actually works and practice it semi-consistently some of the time, it actually gets inside you. And there are miracles that are created out of that. Just the practice of being silent, being mindful, exercising, reading, writing, and combining those at the beginning of a day in some order, some shape or form. It's a dramatic thing. And that was the wonder of his book. He kind of deconstructed excellence, went, oh, look at this. There's some common patterns of people who succeed seem to start their days like this. Wonder if I could deconstruct, make a model it. I could do it. You could do it.
You're 100% right, actually. So I followed that framework. So because it got into my head that if I could repeat what others did, so and that was the thing. So if I could make one change, what would it be? And I literally made that change. So I still today I woke up at now it's even earlier, 3:59. So and it's I promise you it's life changing. I'm not weird. Yeah, it really is life changing.
Wow. Have there been any other books that have been standouts for you in the last 10 or 20 years that you gift regularly or recommend people must read?
Yeah, I'm trying to look around because I think it's downstairs. But one of the books that I have read the most is "The Obstacle Is the Way" by Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
Like when I say the most, I'm talking like 17 times, maybe in different forms.
Yeah.
The in next, I'd say 6 or 7 times would be "Letting Go" is another great book by Dr. David Hawkins. Uh, um, like brilliant book on energy. That's my next, and my new favorite that I've just read once, and I'm going to recommend to all my guy friends is King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Oh my God, what a book!
It is a great
So
book. Yeah.
so literally, I'm only like 2 weeks exposed to that, and so yeah, those are my favorites right now.
Yeah. Wow. And the book that you wrote, tell us about that.
Well, when we went through the Key Person of Influence program, right, and at the time I wrote the book on food and fuel and how we could, fuel our intentions and our goals as entrepreneurs. And that book went to the editors twice, and it's still in my inbox. It never got published. It was called Fuel. But when Amplify happened, so I did We Are Podcast 2015. It was the first podcasting conference in Australia. Um, in 2016, I had the idea for the agency, which was like to do podcasts for other people. And I was like, I'm first going to get my 10 beta clients. That was my first thing that I did. So Glenn Carlson was one of them, who paid us, and they got a crazy deal. I was like, this is the beta deal your grandfathered in for life. If you think it's a good idea, this is where you sign up. I had 8 clients, and Glenn called me and he said, I was in Ballarat, and he said, hey, one of my mates could really use what you're doing. What's the name of your company again? I'm like, Glenn, I'll call you back. And I Googled powerful verbs. This is a true story. in a motel in Ballarat, powerful verbs. I did not get to be. Amplify sounded perfect as to what we were doing.
Yeah.
Called him back. It's called Amplify. And this was a Saturday. So we had to go. We were there for a christening, actually. And then I got back and tried to register the name. Amplify obviously was taken. So then I registered Must Amplify. And this was after 8 clients. I had a name, which was Amplify. And my book came out of me in 6 weeks. Like, I had nothing to do with the book. I had only that's just mind blowing, right? Like, think that the last book took like a year and a half or whatever, and it still didn't get published. And this just everything came out in like 6 weeks. Andrew Griffiths, I have to give him credit. The book coach, the book mentor.
Yeah.
If not for him, it probably wouldn't have come out, that because he deconstructed the way that an author could get their stuff out, and that helped me, obviously. So give credit where credit is due. And so that book is basically what we implemented in. So the Amplify framework has been implemented in thousands of businesses. That is mental. And whether it is a one-on-one, whether it was in a group through the We Are podcast thing, or whether it was people doing my trainings, in the DIY format or in the group thing, that is crazy. So I just put the format together and said, hey, if you're a business and you want a podcast and you want to have voice to your brand, so your customers or your prospects could hear what you care about before they even bought from you, this is how you do it. So that's what it is. That's what the agency was built on, that framework. It works every time. And now even more than ever, I'm so confident of attention, engagement, sales. That's exactly what everyone needs to get their marketing sorted for their business. So yeah.
Amazing. Where can people find out more about that framework that you created? Where's the best place for them to go to see that?
Well, the best place, if you're a business owner and you have a podcast, is to go to roadmap.wearepodcast.com. There's an entire roadmap depending on what revenue you're at in your business, what to focus on, how to. So here's the thesis. Any business needs attention, engagement, sales to convert their marketing, right? So a podcast is the deepest form of engagement that you can get in any form of content, because people are listening to it while they're doing other things. Everything else, you got to stop what they're doing to consume audio, is just deep engagement. So your job is to create attention pieces to people who don't know you, so that they can engage with you and then they can buy from you, right? So you just have, so this roadmap will show you how to get their deepest engagement, to create their perfect attention to get the new clients, and then a method to sell. So that this is a thing that I love about the method to sell, is that as a business owner, if you do not have a method to sell, people will use their method to buy, and that is usually price comparison. So that is how we take care of those 3 elements, and the podcast is by far obviously the most valuable piece. So roadmap.wearepodcast.com, just go download that. It should be there's a video at the end, so you can like show you how to use it as well. And we've got a diagnostic, so if you want to go further and figure out how much attention, engagement, sales you have, just follow the links. There's a diagnostic, and I can answer that. Yeah.
Amazing. It can just, even the way you talk about it, it's like you can see through the matrix what looks so complicated for people, and they're trying, how do I make this work? You're like, whoa, just ones and zeros. It's all I can see. It's all very simple.
It's true.
It's beautiful, and beautiful that I love the story about 9 different careers. So this is just one of the iterations of you showing up to life, having fun, exploring, understanding the gift you've been given, and solving problems for people, and having fun doing so. So it's just exquisite to hear that, because I think people often get locked into one way of being, one story, one character they've developed, one problem they've solved, one thing that's worked. Now they've got to be that forever. Like, well, not sure that's exactly true. In fact, if you think about seasons, no season stays the same forever. Seasons keep changing. And if you can keep updating and growing with the seasons, you have a much more fruitful experience of life.
And I don't think anyone can control life. And I think that's the illusion. The illusion is that we think that if we do all these things, if we meditate, if we get all our reps in, that we can control life. That's not what it is. It just prepares us to deal with the uncertainty of life better. That's it, right? And it's going to change. It's going to constantly change. And a lot of the times, especially if you're a parent, and we are not yet parents, but for parents especially, your kid is looking at you, at the universe, challenging you to take the next step every time. And imagine what it would do to their confidence if they could see you do it. So I don't have kids yet, but that's what I think about, so yeah.
That's a beautiful distinction, and a good place to leave the conversation, unless there's anything that you think would be good to add. Any final thoughts?
No, so thank you for having me. This has been, I love being in the moment, right? And I was always in the moment on this podcast. So thank you for letting me do that.
It's a joy, and I'm sure people will find all kinds of interesting benefits from this. I'm sure this will be a conversation that lingers with them and surprises them and sneaks up on them, and there's some stuff that kind of percolates as a result of just who you are and what you embody. So sincere gratitude from the Insecurity Project and all our listeners.
Thank you for having me.